Hello, my name is John Peace with the Rural Route Newsletter, and I'm here today with our special guest, Adam Murphy. Adam, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, nice to be here, John. My name's Adam Murphy, Democratic candidate for Virginia's ninth District. I'm 30 years old. I'm a software developer uh, living out in Roanoke County, originally from Southern Illinois. I have had family who were farmers. I lived in an area that was coal field, so I think we're going to end up getting a little bit into that, which is very interesting. I grew up right next to a town called Glen Carbon.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, it was literally the next door town we were kind of touching. My wife and I moved to Southwest Virginia during COVID while we were looking for our forever home, and we found it here, and we're very excited to be here. I'm running because I'm a little not just frustrated at the state of the world, not just parties, but just everything is not going the way that the American people need. We're not really getting kind of the attention that we should be getting, and we are so divided in this time and day and age that we're not really seeing, I think, the bigger picture of what we need to be focused on and be united in cause once more, so that way we can all build the future we deserve.
Well, Adam, I'll ask this of any candidate because I was a candidate once years ago, a couple elections and stuff locally. What was the trigger moment? What was the moment that I'm going to run for office? Because that's a big decision.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I would say probably the largest moment for me, there's a lot, but the biggest single one was the Doge event.
Okay.
Now, I'm a software developer by trade, and I get security trainings that teach me all about how, hey, you're working on the weekend and the CEO's friend has reached out to you and they say, hey, the CEO said I should have access to the system. Do you give this person access? This is an actual training that I've gotten over the whole 9 years I've been working in that industry. And of course, the answer is no, right? You
Mhm.
don't just give random people access no matter what they say to you. That's how actually phishing attempts happen all the
Or
time.
how rich they are.
Exactly. And they break through the systems. Like that's a number one vector that they get through to people. And so our federal government has a standard, right? There's supposed to be a vote in the Senate to confirm leadership and departments. So like Doge should have just simply got a vote in the Senate to be able to come in to do these tests that they wanted to do. They never did that vote. And so our federal government's agencies are supposed to be independent of each other. And so when Elon Musk came a knocking, they should have said, hey, you're just telling me that you're the CEO's friend over there. I don't care. All right. No, go get a vote. But we didn't do that. And unfortunately, Elon Musk broke through all these systems. He dismantled USAID. He ended a lot of investigations into himself. And he stole the personal data of all 350 million Americans, which I believe he's using to put on a private server to then train an AI on how to privatize Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare.
Gosh.
That was a huge risk for me. That really triggered me, and I realized then if that's going to be a line they'll cross, ooh, they're going to cross way more. And what have we seen since then? Far worse things going on.
Oh, absolutely. Give you a little bit of my history. Go back way back, early 2000s. I ran for a board of supervisors, and I can remember the personal trigger for me was financial irresponsibility of our local leadership, elected leadership at that time. They were running deficits. Oh my goodness, people will say, "Oh, a Democrat talking about fiscal responsibility." Yes, we're here. There are,
We exist.
yeah,
We do
and
exist.
I come from a farming background, grew up on a dairy farm, live on the family farm now. And farmers, whether they're Democrat or Republican, have always been fiscally conservative because we always had to save money for the future because we were
Mhm.
in the industry has a lot of ups and downs naturally, and you prepared for the future and you saved for the future, and to see these cuts now on the national level. And here's the thing: I told a local, hey, I'm in the coal fields of Virginia that voted 80% for Donald Trump. And I was talking to one of the old school conservative Republicans and said, hey, if you know, not that I would have liked it, but I could have stomached it, all these cuts, if you were doing something positive with the national deficit, cutting it,
Well, right. If we
balancing
were
the books.
actually
I mean,
not
I
running
still
a
wouldn't have
deficit.
liked where he cut, but I could stomach it. But to do all these cuts and hurt working class people and hurt poor people to give to the rich, I can't stomach. And then have our congressman go along with that
Yeah.
without
It's
question.
it's crazy that we have tax cuts that are so tax cutting that it's still keeping us in full deficit by trillions of dollars,
Making it
right?
worse, worse,
It's
absolutely.
there all the problems that we all think of those issues. It's not like, yeah, that's going to be better. And we're not going to grow fast enough with things like AI to offset that. And AI is its own separate can of worms because if it becomes as big as they want it to become, that's a job replacement,
Yeah.
right? The United States is not ready for 25% unemployment. We're not.
And nobody is. And
Yeah.
that's a problem third world countries have. is
Exactly.
unemployment rates like that.
Because they loot it. They loot the government functionally. And right now that's I feel like what we're seeing is that there's no fiscal responsibility at all. Zero.
No, and no responsible government. They're not being responsible to the working class, not being responsible to needy people that
Yeah.
need these services like Medicaid. And it's just totally irresponsible government is what they're handing us. Yeah,
They're trading our future away with the hope that we're going to outgrow our debt. But the reality is you can't have $4 trillion in deficit year after year and go, well, we're going to outgrow that, guys.
but way back when I went to school, Virginia Tech, I took economics. I remember a professor talking about trickle down economics. That was in the 80s. That's what I kind of grew up with and stuff. Hey, let me tell you the problem with trickle down economics. You can say, well, gosh, we give these tax cuts to billionaires. They'll spend money, create jobs, do this and that. First of all, it doesn't really happen like that. And second, in rural America and rural Southwest Virginia, we don't have none of those billionaires here. So we
Yeah.
get absolutely, hey, if Amazon grows, we don't get that growth. And so what you've done is you've hurt Southwest Virginia, you've heard the ninth congressional district, and we're not even if it works the way they say it's going to work, and we know it's not going to. We don't benefit from it. The urban metropolitan areas, Northern Virginia, will benefit from it.
Yeah, they often make their engines that they put out in places like Southwest, they make it to be an extension of their big business out
Yeah,
on out somewhere else. And it's never designed to be an independent, capable engine that's building itself up in perpetuity. It's meant to be designed as like a handcuff to the industries that they have. So that way it never really gets too big.
yeah. Uh, Tell me about some of the other issues. You've been making the tours, been going to different county meetings and stuff, and meeting people throughout the district. What have you heard on the road?
I would say a big one is about AI data centers and food security. I think they're kind of they don't maybe seem on the surface immediately linked, but kind of renewable energy data centers and this they really all are. In the United States right now, we're at like 9% farmland. It's the lowest it's ever been
Hmm.
in the history of this country. A lot of small farms are closing. It's going to mostly big agricultural, massive farms, not to average everyday family farms. And what I'm seeing is there's a way that we can be smart about our energy policy that, we want solar, we want wind, we want nuclear potentially too, but we can't replace farmland to put these down, right? They need to remain in the hands of local farmers. And on top of that, we really need to have much better food security, which to me means taking food systems and rebuilding the local chains back out
Yeah.
and making sure that farmers that want to be able to do their own meat or milk production, that we have safe, portable systems that allow them to get that product out safely and they can sell it to people. And so that way we can have a nice local economy. So for me, all these things kind of crash together with a data center because data centers are really the worst of all those things where they're taking up massive amounts of land,
Hmm.
they're taking up a ton of resources. And in Virginia, the regulations are kind of weird with how wastewater and stuff works. They don't have to necessarily pre-treat their stuff back into the system. And so what happens is a lot of these local communities, like with Botetourt, Wise, with the electric authority, if these data centers get put down, they take up like a third of the entire water resources. They take up power that's as much as the entire county multiple times over. It requires raising your rates to be able to build out that infrastructure improvement. And at the same token, with AI, they could blow up in tomorrow. If this whole bubble pops, we're not going to be in a good spot.
I'm glad you
Sorry.
brought up the infrastructure. Let me tell you, you can be a Democrat and be pro growth. I was very involved in economic development to recruit industry and even recruited a data center here to Wise County. But the key to it is, and I'm glad you brought up infrastructure, is for them to pay their fair share of
Absolutely.
that infrastructure. See, the problem is they're getting localities to front the upfront cost of that infrastructure and also
Yep.
getting massive tax incentives on the
Yep.
back end. If they were paying their way, a lot less and actually becomes it could be a good project for rural Southwest Virginia.
I think too, if there was transparency in the
Yep.
deal, if the community knew exactly what they were going to get, they were getting the honest information, not under NDA half information.
Mhm.
I do believe there are places all around this country, including Southwest Virginia, that would absolutely say, yes, I want this. But for me, it's they often don't tell that truth. They kind of have like, for example, the With one is under NDA, so we don't know exactly what they're getting. And they're upgrading the infrastructure for, I think, Appalachian Power, like for the transmission lines
Mhm.
for them. But that's not going to change the fact that probably rates are going to go up with those increases as they do that construction. It doesn't change the fact that There's still no real rules around what the water treatment that they have to do. If I knew for a fact that data center, whatever water it was taking out, was treating it to the highest quality standard back out, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about it.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't do that. That's not part of the deal.
Absolutely. Besides, okay, we've touched base on a little bit on AI and solar, nuclear. Let's talk a little bit about, and this is a button topic all throughout Southwest Virginia, healthcare.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What have you heard going to the various counties?
Well, a lot of people are struggling. I mean, I hear over and over again how much they don't enjoy how their insurance works or how expensive it might be. And really, in places like Southwest, too, it's a lot of times access to that healthcare. There were plenty of people I met when I was going on tour, and we had like a town hall in Bristol, for example. And we actually had some people who came out from Wise and Lee. And they literally said, I'm already used to having to travel 30, 40, 50 miles to get the healthcare I need. And I just got tired of it. So I moved out of those areas. They just moved to where the healthcare was. And in the richest country in the history of the world, there's no reason why we don't have healthcare and maternity wards in every single county in this district. We used to, right?
Mhm.
And I find that very frustrating. And it comes down to funding. It comes down to we have a system that incentivizes insurance companies rather than directly paying a lot of these costs, right? And then we really got to get back to basics in a lot of ways, common sense, where it's just, hey, we don't have to run the government as with healthcare, but we can certainly pay for it without having to pay the middleman of insurance companies more
Yeah.
to blow up the cost for everybody. Because I think that's a really big thing is if cost wasn't nearly as high, a lot of these places would stay funded and they'd stay open.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in an era, or especially when I was on the board of supervisors here in Wise County, early 2000s. Dixon County, I sit on a local board called Virginia Coalfield Economic Development Authority, and we worked real hard to reopen the hospital in Dixon County. We even did some grants and stuff. And then, of course, County General Hospital was closed for a significant period of time and took a lot of work to get it reopened. And let me give the viewers a little bit of talk about Dixon County. Right on the Kentucky border, they had one hospital in the whole county. And Lee County is another one. They only had one hospital. When it closed, you had areas in those two counties where literally, if you had a heart attack or your kid got hurt in a sporting event, you were looking at over an hour, hour and a half drive to the nearest ER.
And you and I both know those first 15 minutes in
Yep.
critical issues like that, it's the single most important amount of time. If you can't get to a place quickly,
Yeah.
it's much worse outcomes. And that's again, in the richest country in the history of the world, it's just not acceptable to have that as our standard.
Absolutely. And, keeping, and also with the aging population, we'll talk a little bit about the coal fields here, Wise, Dixon, Buchanan County. And we got an aging population, throughout the ninth district. And I'll let you talk about how varied it is. You got from Christiansburg, Blacksburg, going through their big issues is growth problems. And here in the coal fields, we got depopulation problems. So we got an aging population that needs more health care, not cuts, more.
Yep, exactly.
And I'll let you talk about how varied what you've seen throughout the ninth district.
It definitely is, I think, one of the more unique places in this country in terms of geographic area. From Christiansburg and Martinsville and Roanoke County, completely different issues and problems directly facing them. And as you go west through the district, you get agricultural issues, you might get broadband issues, and each place has its own kind of flavor too. They don't all
Yeah.
act the same, they don't all say the same things. You find out that there's
We talk a little bit
rivalries.
different, don't we?
Sometimes you find out that there's rivalries between certain areas where they're like, "Oh, we don't like those people," and and then they're like, "Oh, we don't like them." And it's not always just not liking. Sometimes it's liking them more, or they like the areas that's there. In my experience, kind of the coal fields has probably the most unique vibe
Yeah.
out of all of them. I think that the people there are very passionate, but they're just not catered to.
Yeah.
You know, and I think really that's kind of the universal thread here in places in rural America, especially in the ninth district is people not feeling like they're seen, right? That's kind of a common connection, no matter what part of the area they're in, no matter what their culture is. There's a feeling that they're not getting the actual services, the actual direct need that they need. And it really is sad that as crazy it is, just going up to people, talking to them allows them to enter the conversation and then they end up being a lot more excited and they want to do stuff. I've had people that have joined our campaign just because we had a conversation with them. I just talked to them and I asked about their opinion. And I think this data center thing, especially, is a surprisingly large unifier. People do not want the data centers
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all bad. I think it's mostly a transparency thing. But it's interesting seeing that even in places that seem different, that there can still be quite a bit of common ground if we're just willing to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. You always, you hear the word rural America. Let me tell you, you might be rural in Roanoke County or Shenandoah Valley, but when you live
Not in the
within,
same way.
I know
Not in the
it's
same
not the
way.
same. When you live within an hour of an interstate, no, you might be living on a farm, but you're within an hour of an interstate. We're down here where it's way over an hour to get to an interstate. And also you got to take fact, once you get far southwest, when you live closer to 6 other state capitals than you do Richmond, Virginia, that's rural,
Yeah.
real rural. And that's where, we don't feel like we're hurt. Now, I'll give you this quick little story. I used to have a boss, and he lived in the western part of Lee County, down towards
So
Thomas
he was
Walker.
deep.
Yes. And he used to bring this up. He said, if I tell somebody, a total stranger, I live in Lee County, Virginia, they'll consider me an East Coast guy. But he said, if you look at the map and draw a line northwest, I live further west than Detroit, Michigan. If I say I live in Detroit, I'm a Midwest guy. But he actually lived further in Virginia west than Detroit, Michigan. So shows you, how far we go down.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's kind of wild, isn't it?
Yeah. And we don't get a lot of attention from Richmond, and that's probably the biggest problem. Tell you, you brought something up earlier about internet access, broadband access, and we still have two big areas in Southwest Virginia that do not have quality broadband internet access. And Starlink is an option for some people, but it's expensive.
Well, and it's not, to me, it's a stopgap,
Yeah,
right? Like it's nice to be able to have satellite internet, but it'll never be better than a fiber line direct to your house.
yeah.
Never.
And then also, believe it or not, we have mountains where even satellite you can't get everything.
Well, that's because of the structure of the mountains with
Yeah,
the radio frequencies it bounces off, and then it's just you can't get anything. And that's for cell towers too, right? It's not
yeah,
just satellite. It's a problem, which is why we need to really make it a priority to connect Southwest Virginia and Appalachia in a lot of ways with broadband.
yeah,
And I'd love to connect it too. This is kind of a stretch goal, let's say, with rail again. I'd love us to have a really connected passenger rail again, because I think that would really help places that don't feel connected, that maybe it is an hour to the interstate, right?
yeah.
But you could take a train ride and get to that city center super easily,
Oh yeah.
or to where the interstate might be or wherever.
Absolutely. Not only for economic development, for logistics on just transportation in general. I told somebody the other day, I was talking about our farm here. If you gave me a choice between high quality broadband or a 4-lane road running by it, I'd pick the broadband internet
Yeah.
for economic development because of rural jobs
There's
and
so
these,
many things that bring.
yeah, virtual jobs.
Yep,
Because and that's one thing we got to get throughout the all Southwest Virginia is broadband internet to
I
everybody.
agree.
It's
I
just
agree.
unacceptable.
To me, it's like a 21st century right at this point.
Oh yeah,
Like the to be connected to the internet, to not have that option, you are missing out on so much without meaning to.
yeah,
And it's no one's fault except for the government who hasn't been able to build this out yet already.
yeah. Well, Adam, I told you I'd keep you about 20 minutes. Anything you want, tell the viewers before we sign off and stuff.
Just I hope you all have a happy new year,
Yes.
and look forward to us at our launch event on January 10th. It should be really big. We'll be live streaming it. And again, we're talking about broadband right now. Not everybody might be able to have access to that, but we're also going to be doing a tour through the whole district. And I hope I get to meet you in person.
We sure will. I'll put your contact information in the comments of the link to the video and everything so people can contact you.
Absolutely.
Donations, hey, takes money to
Always
run a
helpful.
campaign.
Yep.
But so glad to have you on here, Adam. We'll talk soon, okay?
Yep. Thank you so much for having me, John.
Okay, thank you now.